Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming. So many familiar faces, friends in the audience here. I do want to recognize my wife and my two daughters. Catherine, Olivia is over here in India. My in-laws, Harry and Sandra Wade, and numerous other friends that I know from most of these stories. You probably were a part of at some point in time. A lot of people here certainly have come up and shared those with me. So um, I thought I'd get started by talking a little bit about the Augusta National. I don't know if you've ever seen this letter dated September 2nd, 1931, from Bobby Jones, and it was addressed to Mr. Crawford Johnson in Birmingham, Alabama. And that letter was inviting him to become a member of the Augusta National, which was at that time still a plan. And it says, "Dear Crawford, you may have heard that I'm interested with a group of my friends in organizing a new golf club in Augusta, Georgia. The enclosed preliminary draft of the invitation will tell you something about it. What I want to accomplish there is an ideal golf club with every facility for golf, including a course which will be outstanding. Dr. Alistair McKenzie, the architect in charge, and I have spent 2 days together on the property, and we both believe that we can do just that. I'm particularly anxious to interest my own friends in this project to get them to come down and play the course and take an interest in the club. I am therefore writing you to ask if you will not join the club and serve on its board of governors. I know you can be of assistance to us in getting the kind of members we want. Please be assured that you will not be asked for any financial assistance other than the cost of the membership. A sufficient sum has been underwritten by people interested in Augusta and the South to enable us to complete the construction of the course and the modest clubhouse which we intend to build. The whole story is that I have an opportunity to build a golf course according to my own ideas at a place which I deem ideally situated, and I want to have the right people associated with me in running it. If you don't feel that this thing would appeal to you, please feel perfectly free to say no or say so. My own thought is that I should like to have you if you think you would enjoy it. I will be most happy to supply additional information if you would like to have it. Warm regards, Bob Jones." So that kind of started the start of the Augusta National, and then my father in 1961, he was the assistant manager at the Catawba Cliffs Beach Club, which was a part of the Catawba Yacht and Country Club in Port Clinton, Ohio, Sandusky, Ohio. And so he was encouraged by a couple of the members that shared membership in Augusta to apply as a 26-year-old to be the general manager of the Augusta National. So I have his interesting, I found in some of his things, his cover letter that he actually sent to Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts at the time. I won't read it all to you, but I will tell you that an excerpt from this really frames what he was all about and what his association with the Augusta National and the Masters was all about. And this is a quote from his resume cover letter. And he said, "I am certain of my capability to maintain the high level of standards of operations based on my experience in clubs highly esteemed in this area. I have a genuine desire to please membership as well as operators. My background has been in clubs which strive towards culinary and operational perfection. I enjoy the inherent satisfaction of pleasing even the most discriminating people." Maybe that's what caught their attention. If you know anything about Augusta and Augusta National, that's kind of what that's all about. In 1961, when he applied as a 26-year-old, this is what these gentlemen would probably be about what he approached at that time. You can see that Mr. Roberts was a little slumping. He certainly wasn't in the condition that he once was, but Clifford Roberts on the right, Bob Jones on the left. And his interview took place in November, and he came down to Augusta, interviewed with these two gentlemen, and when he got back to Ohio, he told my mother, "Janice, I think I may have this job. I felt real good about the interview, and I got a lot of good feelings between us." And he said, I think I'm going to get this job. Well, a month went by. He didn't hear anything. He said, well, that was a great experience. Got to meet, these two great gentlemen, and it was a, opportunity. Well, he got a phone call about 2 weeks before Christmas, and it was on the line early in the morning. Mr. Roberts says, this is Mr. Roberts. Phil, we need you to be in Augusta tomorrow. He said, yeah, he gave me a lot of time, but I'll be there. And so he looked out the window, and if you know anything about Lake Erie, there are these lake effect blizzards that come off there. So he was looking out the window, looking at the snowstorm, said, yes, sir, I'll be there. Well, he drove down to Columbus, got on a plane, got to Augusta, and he thought it was a second interview where they offered him the job. So he called my mother, Janice, up again, said, Janice, I've got great news. I'm going to be the next general manager of the Augusta National. Under one condition, Mr. Roberts wants me to start today, 2 weeks before Christmas. Go figure. Well, they had been without a general manager for a number of months prior to my father coming there. The president and General Eisenhower had picked his favorite armed forces courses, their club managers and such. And obviously, they didn't have a great relationship with Mr. Roberts, so there was a lot of turnover. So this was an opportunity, I think, to establish a lifelong relationship, my father, between he and Mr. Jones as well as Mr. Roberts. So they moved down to Augusta. Had to move. My older sister, Wendy, was a 1-year-old. Actually, she would be one in December, so somewhere in that time frame, December 7th. And moved down, and Mr. Roberts put them in the Tennessee cabin. So they went to the Tennessee cabin, stayed there for a year. After a year, they were building a house that was near Washington Road, near the entrance that goes to where the par 3 is, and that was going to be our family home per Mr. Roberts. But my dad said, Mr. Roberts, I haven't left work for a year. Can I at least move across the street? So we moved into National Hills, and that's where we had our home. He was close enough, but far enough away that he didn't have to be there 24/7. So this is, of course, you recognize the gentleman in the middle there, Jack Nicklaus, and my father over the shoulder there to the left. And that was the first year that Jack Nicklaus won. And my father's certainly there to make sure that everything went well and that everybody had what they needed. And that was his role as the general manager. Okay, so even as a young man in 1963, think of this, he's 28 years old. The Augusta Chronicle had a article that says City defends title, and they interviewed my father. Augusta, world golf capital. So this was written by Paul Hemphill, a Chronicle sports editor. In the New York Herald Tribune of June 16, 1963, columnist Jimmy Breslin was in an angry mood. For some reason, he wrote, professional golf is a sport of amateur towns. New York should be the place where the biggest professional tournament is held each year. The Masters at Augusta now holds the title. How Augusta, Georgia can have anything is beyond us. Staying in this town is just like serving a sentence. Succinct answer. Augusta, in turn, became angry itself until, this is, Mr. Phil Wahl, club manager at the Augusta National Golf Club, answered Mr. Breslin calmly and succinctly. If you want to go to a big city, said Wahl, you go to New York. But if you want to see golf, you come to Augusta, period. Thus, the brief repartee once again underscored the fact that Augusta, Georgia is the golf capital of the world. The Masters Golf Tournament held here each spring makes it so. In terms of publicity and money, it is almost impossible to say exactly how much this tournament is worth each year to its host city, and it still stands that way today. And describing its splendor and its greatness is every bit as difficult. Golf fans come by the thousands each April, sleeping where they can, eating where they can, to get close-ups, looks at Arnold Palmer, Julius Boros, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, and the other present-day greats. Of course, now, today, we know Rory and all of his predecessor, and Tiger didn't even show up this year. But a lot of other names have changed. Television cameras, radio microphones, and newspaper typewriters, and today computers, come from every principal area of the nation to tell the world what's going on. In brief, all eyes are focused on Augusta for one solid week because simply that's where the Masters is being played. Why is the Masters the great tournament that it has become? Hear Phil Wahl. This course and this tournament were built on love and tradition, all of it over at least 30 years. And of course, we've been around for more than 30 years now. Because of that, the Masters will never die. Mr. Bobby Jones and Mr. Clifford Roberts didn't think about how much money they could make or how much people they could draw. When they envisioned all of this in the 30s, they built it because they wanted to have a beautiful place for the world's top golfers to play. What Breslin wants is instant tradition, and you just can't make it in 2 or 3 years. And Bobby Jones himself once said, "The course and only the course. It will be held in Augusta or won't be held at all." That makes it as clear as it can be. Mention the Masters and you think of Augusta. Mention Augusta and you think of the Masters. It's been a happy marriage and one that has lasted 80-some years now. So I will note that Jimmy Breslin became a 1986 Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and today he still writes a column in the Sunday edition of the New York Daily News, although he was off the mark on that one. So that's my father on the back of the clubhouse there in the golf cart, probably circa 1975. And this is my memories. My father was always in his office on the phone, and he actually had 2 different phones, and Billy Murphy will attest to that, phones, and he could have one on one ear and one on the other and still handle that with 3 things going on. And I think Mr. Putnam, somebody else mentioned that he could type faster than anybody else, and I can attest to that. This was an article on our family at the time. I had 3 children. That's my older sister Wendy on the backside, my sister Bridget, and myself there, my mother, riding through Montclair, and it talks about a busy life of a club manager, which is an understatement. And here's our family too. What you don't see here in these pictures is that my parents had 2 more boys and adopted 4 more boys from my aunt, who was a single parent who died suddenly, and brought them down from Ohio. And again, this is in the middle of the Masters. He's got his filterless Camel cigarette, and working hard. Next. And my mother and Jackie Christian, Jackie and Frank there. This is my mother, and of course her good friend Jackie, and Frank Christian was my dad's best friend. He's here. Say hello, Frank. He probably took this shot. I'm sure he did. So move forward on that one. So, these are some memorabilia that my dad had, the different members patches. These are not the ones you get off of eBay or Amazon, or these are the real thing. So anyway, we have a great collection of different memorabilia, and I know everybody in this room probably has a little bit of memorabilia, but it's great to have this. I want to read something else, what I think is a mark on what the Augusta National is about, and how it positioned. And my father's involvement on it certainly had some impact here. But this was by Paul Harvey, and it's called Splendid Partnership, Eden on Earth. This is Augusta, Georgia. This is where 100 years ago, God and man formed a splendid partnership and set about to rebuild an Eden on earth. The man did not know the full meaning of what he was doing, for he was a practical man. He cleared the lush loam of hillsides hereabout and planted trees and flowers, a commercial nursery he thought it would be 100 years ago. From the corners of the earth, shrubs and flowering plants, camellias, azaleas, dogwoods, redbuds, exotic hardwoods, to sprinkle the pines with autumn splendor. For a half-century, the commercial nursery in the rolling hills west of town reseated itself. Then, 1929, Depression. There never will be another Bobby Jones, for he, in the formative years of our game of golf, had the summit all to himself, and when he retired, he returned to his wife's home, Augusta, and it was he, Jones, who envisioned the larger plan for the nursery out on Washington Road. For depression prices, he and friends bought that magnificent 365 acres and set about to groom the enchanted forest, to carve fairways amidst the splendor of rolling hills and bubbling brooks, and to carpet them wall to wall with green velvet. The clubhouse and the cottages nearby must not intrude upon this manicured landscape. They must be simple, elegant, and in the end, this course must host the masters of the game. And the past Grand Master of them all, Bobby Jones, would allow the National to be nothing less than the well-tailored aristocrat of all golf courses in the New World. Once each year, the Eden is open to all. Once each year, when the Masters meets to play, the world walks those fairways or watches them through TV eyes. Here, each springtime, today's uncommon men walk in the footsteps of Hagen, Nelson, Sarazen, and Armour and Jones. For this is the end of the rainbow, where the colors are an impossible illusion, but the pot of gold is real. And where oft times one competitor closest to it suddenly, mercilessly grabbed by the tentacles of an ancient overhang, or reaches dreams end in a hot white sand, or in a cool shaded pool, or he dares the forest shortcut, might be ringed round and imprisoned by trees and shrubs with women's names and blossoms in their hair. Lovely, fragrant, unyielding, this is the Augusta National, where the masters play. And sometimes a fortunate amateur who may pass the way, I did. And someday, when I stop trembling, I will try to recite what it was like when a fledgling hacker made his way up the long lane of magnolias, just a mashie shot from a busy street to the Eden of primitive beauty, embellished by human hands and watered and generations of cold sweat. My pilgrimage to the golfer's Mecca, the Augusta National, may make whatever comes thereafter an anticlimax, in a sense, but no more. I say no man who has braved this carnivorous course with nothing but a stick in his hand will ever need to be afraid again. And that's the rest of the story, according to Paul Harvey. Okay, I'm going to talk about the president. Dwight Eisenhower, of course, he spent a lot of time at the Augusta National, and my father became close friends with he and his wife, Mamie, during their time. Of course, President Eisenhower died in '69, December '69, and but Mamie would continue to come on and stay at the Eisenhower cabin. And here's another inscribed photo from him, one that captures his what he must have experienced of his lifetime. And this was a casual scene out on the course, and this is a picture of he and Mamie. And this is one of my favorites, him standing in front of the clubhouse, because a couple of those trees are no longer there, and I don't know if it was because of the hurricane or something else, but that's a picture from certainly in the probably in the 50s or early 60s. But let me stop there for a second and tell you a quick story, a little local lore. So obviously, General Eisenhower spent a lot of time in Europe as the supreme commander during World War II. He had an affinity for good cold beer, and he had been at the National feeling a little bit restrained by his Secret Service detail, who was always looking over his shoulder and making sure that somebody bad didn't decide to take retribution for different things in his history. But one day he approached my father and said, "Phil, I really would love to have a cold beer and a good pizza." My dad said, "I've got the perfect place. It's not far from here." And he says, "But I don't want to have the Secret Service around me. Can we just go take a break?" And so they left out the back gate, drove up Bertman's and Highland Avenue to a little place off of Central Avenue called the Tip Top. And so he and President Eisenhower, proceeded to have a good cold Pabst Blue Ribbon beer on draft, as well as a wonderful pizza. And you probably, if you've been around here long enough, you probably had both of those there. And meanwhile, about an hour later, the panicked Secret Service detail shows up and said, "Mr. President, you're supposed to let us know where you are all times." And he goes, "I know, just get out of my hair for a moment. I'm just having a good time." So they almost created a incident that probably made worldwide news. But in Augusta, what happens in Augusta stays in Augusta. So, okay. Of course, my father in the clubhouse, standing by the trophy, and in past years, and when I was a little guy, the trophy was always in the back of the clubhouse, in the dining room there, exposed, no glass protecting it. And I have to admit that I probably took my little Matchbox car and ran that around there, thinking that would be neat to go inside that little clubhouse. And people ask me about, do I remember Bobby Jones, and I do. And I hate to say this, but I remember him as kind of an old, decrepit, scary guy with this, with cane and a walker. But obviously, he was at one time an amazingly fit athlete that had a great history and has left a mark that will never be removed in the game of golf. But his relationship with my father was a good one. But I can tell you that my father's day-to-day workings with Mr. Roberts, and obviously as his health declined, Mr. Jones, you can see the difference. This signature was signed before he started having some more problems with his musculoskeletal disease, and you can see this. He started signing Bob Jones instead of his full signature. And this is a actual article by Grantland Rice about his Grand Slam, which we have, and signed by Bob Jones. It was a pretty special piece that was signed to my father. And when he died in 1971, they put a black wreath on the gate and closed it. The club was closed for a period of time. This is I was a clubhouse runner from about this tall until I was in college, and one of my favorite people. Of course, he had the shot heard around the world, the double eagle on number 15. He wore knickers before Payne Stewart even was old enough to know what those were. And he was a great gentleman, and the ladies in the clubhouse loved him, and he was always smiling and a guy that you could really get to know. And he always patted me on the head and said, "How you doing, little Phil?" So, okay, and Sam Snead, he was a kind of more standoffish, not as easy to talk to. This is a picture inscribed to my grandfather, who my father, of course, kept close, and they always came to the tournament every year. My first memory of being at the tournament was probably 4 years old and sitting on my grandfather's shoulders, looking down number 4 and watching from tee to green the shots on the par 3 number 4. So people ask me, how long have you been out there? And I think, age 4, I'm almost 62 now, so it's been a few years. And then Arnold Palmer. Okay, I can't pass by this without having some comments about him. He was a consummate gentleman. Everybody loved him. He was just the real deal. And Frank, this is your photograph. And this was taken every year. He would do the Masters film introduction, driving a Cadillac convertible down Magnolia Lane. They would capture that, park it in front of the clubhouse, and he would say, "Welcome to 1974 Masters, brought to you by Cadillac." So he's there standing by the Cadillac there, and I'm the clubhouse runner sitting on a log bench that's cut in half. It's a split log bench right in front of my dad's office, which was, if you look in the front of the clubhouse, it was the left window, left of the door. And so Johnny Milton and Sammy, two chauffeurs, and little Phil sitting there watching the film this. And then when he was walking away, another gentleman in a green jacket walked up to him, and they had some conversation. And he said, "Go inside, and I'll wait. I'll be there in a minute." And he went and sat down next to me, had a conversation, and said, "Hey, little Phil, how you doing? How's your dad? I know he's busy. I know he's..." And then he asked Johnny Milton who was on the course, because he knew who was all coming and going. He was always running people to and from the airport, and chatted for a good close to 10 minutes, having good conversation. And then he walked in, and Johnny Milton said, "Hey, little Phil, you know who that guy was that was talking to Mr. Palmer?" And I said, "No." He says, "Well, he was the CEO of the General Motors Corporation. He just got put in the clubhouse, and he's sitting down with us." So kind of tell you a story about, that he would give time to even the young man and two guys that were employees of the club. So it made a lifelong impression on me. And then Gary Player, I have some experiences. He's still around. Did you see him do the honorary and did the high kick afterwards? I mean, guy is amazing, in amazing condition and health. So the year that he won his last Masters, let me get some drink here. When he won his last Masters in 1978, which was the last Masters my dad was at the National, Bowman Milligan, who was the club valet, who normally brought the jacket from the green jacket storage to the Butler Cabin. This is the Butler Cabin. Was not well. He was not. So Dad said, "Hey, Phil, can you take the green jacket over to the Butler Cabin and go find Gary Player's jacket?" And I did. I found it and took it in the golf cart down there to the Butler Cabin. Walked in there and handed it to Tom Watson, who was going to be handing it off to Gary Player for his last win. And I'm standing with Gary Player's son and daughter, who were about my age, and we were looking in from that door back there on the left, looking as the ceremony went on, and obviously he became Masters champion for the third time. So, okay, so here's some more of our memorabilia. My father, the center one is Eisenhower's golf ball. It's probably not in as good a condition, because at the time that was a Spalding dot. I think it's dot one, and it was, I don't know whatever material it was, but it was not gutta percha, but somewhere between that and our modern balls. But you can see it's, and then there's Gerald Ford and Spiritu Agnew on the same board, and that was one of my dad's collections that he thought highly of. And then again, my dad's sitting there on that phone with the armrest, the headrest on it. Here are the Augusta National employees photographed by Frank Christian. Again, this was those 63 individuals made up the permanent staff of the Augusta National. The caddies weren't represented; they were in a different group. But these are the employees that handled the front row, front office, and the golf pros to the right, Bob Kletke and Dave Spencer, and caddy master Freddie Bennett. And then I mentioned the two chauffeurs. You can see Johnny Milton and Sammy Little, and they're on that second row with the caps on. And the housekeeping staff, the kitchen staff, and then the wait staff. I've got in my office at home, I have that blown up in a big poster size. Okay, back to Clifford Roberts. Of course, he was regarded as the benevolent dictator. Okay, people liked him, but if it wasn't his way, it was the highway. And I could tell you some stories about all that. To the end of his life, he was dying of a terminal disease, and again, being the benevolent dictator and also the person that's going to be in charge of his own destiny, chose to end his life. But leading up to that, he was ill and he was on the grounds of the Augusta National, and he had refused any kind of attention from the doctors and nurses. They couldn't come in, but he allowed my father to come in, and my father came to the point where he was having to take the blood pressure readings and the pulse and all that stuff, and he was taking those readings on us kids because his arms were about the same size as the kids, and he was pumping up the blood pressure cuff, doing those things on us kids to practice to do that. And then obviously to the end, he was there and was sent home one night. We hadn't seen Dad for several weeks, and so Dad came home, and that morning I had gotten up for school, was sitting there watching television, and a phone call came from the club, and it was a housekeeper on the phone. So she said, "I need to talk to Mr. Wahl. You know, we're not able to find Mr. Roberts. He's missing." So Dad jumped up out of bed when he was out the door, and came to find out that he had ended his life there at the Eisenhower Pond. But it was interesting that I got that call and was able to wake my father up. But my dad and Mr. Roberts had correspondence on a regular basis. He actually had moved to the Bahamas at a point in time, and these stamped envelopes, I didn't mean to do that, these are a stack of what I had. My dad knew I liked to collect stamps, so he gave me these envelopes. I'm glad I didn't take the envelope apart and take the stamp out, but I kept the envelope, so I have a stack of those. Don't have any of the correspondence that was in there, but it was neat to have that and to look back on as a great treasure for me and my family, for sure. And this is a picture that Mr. Roberts, at the end of his life, was going to people that he thought highly of and had inscribed some comments to those that I think were impactful in his life. And he made this inscription to my father: "For Phillip Wahl, the best club manager the Augusta National ever had or expects to have, Clifford Roberts." And he didn't hand out compliments, just without a lot of thought. So that's certainly meaningful for us. Okay, now Billy Murphy, I told you I was going to read this letter, and I will do that because I want to share that with you. So this was a letter, April 18th, 1977. Mr. Roberts was ill during that time. And he wrote this to Catherine Murphy, worked in tournament headquarters, was Mr. Roberts' assistant, played a important role in what went on at tournament headquarters. "Dear Catherine, another Masters tournament is now history, and we can look back at 1977 as a tremendous success. I cannot remember a year when we received quite so many compliments. As I sat at the Sunday presentation ceremony, I could not help but feel honored to have been a part of it all. I swelled with pride as I thought of the willingness of our club and tournament organization to make it all possible. To simply congratulate you on a great Masters would be totally inadequate. This was by far the smoothest operation we'd ever had, on the surface, to the spectators and participants, and from an organizational standpoint. It is heartening to see the enthusiasm of so many individuals working together toward a common cause. The thousands of details were met perfectly this year, and the result was a spectacular tournament in total. Please know that I personally appreciate all that you did to make my job easier. It is comforting to know that we have a dedicated and capable organization. This year, with Mr. Roberts somewhat under the weather, it was particularly important that everyone chip in to make the Masters a success. I know he was honored that everyone did his best to carry on the tradition of this great event, even in his absence. And to the masterful touch of Mr. William H. Lane's leadership, and we had an unbeatable team. But this would not have been as eminently possible without you. Many thanks." It was absolutely, absolutely. Well, and Donna, you were there too, so I'm sure that you probably had a similar letter as well. But and then after Mr. Roberts' passing, he wrote a memo to all the club employees dated October 3rd, 1977. Of course, the subject is carrying on the operation of the club. The club met with a tragic experience this past week, the death of Clifford Roberts. I have a hard time reconciling myself to the fact that Mr. Roberts is gone, that his directions will come no more. His past leadership and guidance will long remain an inspiration to me, however. Those of us who worked with him, worked with and for Mr. Roberts, were cognizant of his demand for perfection, his high ideals, his striving for constant improvement, his endless drive, his dedication to tradition, his respect for efficiency, his adherence to the rules and policies, his sense of dignity, and his unbelievable endurance. Unselfishly, he gave of himself to bring the club and the masters to a standard unequaled in the game of golf, solely for the game of golf. The contributions of Mr. Roberts' time, efforts, and energy have meant so much to many and have affected millions of people. He left a legacy to be attended to and to be continued in the future by a new regime. Mr. Roberts had handpicked William H. Lane as his successor. The Board of Governors met yesterday and elected Mr. Lane to the role of Chief Executive Officer of the club and unanimously voted to respect Mr. Roberts' wishes. At the same meeting, Hord W. Hardin was elected vice chairman of the Board of Governors. It is now a matter of carrying on tradition, improving upon which has been in the past, and meeting the multitude of demands of the future, a great deal of which is highly dependent upon each of us employed by the club. The new administration is important to the success of these achievements. We must be supportive in ensuring this will occur. I pray that out of respect for Mr. Roberts and due to your personal sense of pride, you will lend a hand to maintain the principles of the Augusta National Golf Club and aid in continuing its greatness. I think they certainly have, obviously. Okay, so this photo may not mean much to anybody here, but Frank would know this gentleman here. Is this Yoshi, Frank? Is that Yoshi Endo, or is this Yoshi Endo from? Is that the gentleman? Yeah, that's Yoshi. So Yoshi helped my father negotiate with the Japanese broadcast and sponsors group to carry live coverage all the way over to the Asia Pacific part of the world. So it was worldwide coverage. They had accomplished a relationship with the BBC to carry it over in Europe, and then Tokyo Broadcasting. So Yoshi was instrumental in helping with that effort. And Dad was negotiating sponsors' rights, and one of them was Suntory Whiskey, and he became the Suntory Man. So I don't know if you've seen the movie Lost in Translation with Bill Murray. He was representative for Suntory. Well, that was long after Dad was already in that role. And when he got off the plane in Tokyo and they said Suntory Man, so anyway, in the center of Tokyo, which is like down in Times Square in New York, big 10-story tall effigy of my dad, with a Suntory whiskey bottle there. So imagine that. But he also did a commercial for Suntory on the grounds of the Augusta National, and I'm going to show you a video that was shared with our family from the producers of that, Planning International, and you'll run that.
I imagine if I was asked what really makes the Masters great. It'd be difficult if I had to find just any one thing. It's really an impossible situation. The Masters is really a combination of the players, the great golf course that Bob Jones built, designed, and the tremendous excitement that we have every year. It's just a phenomenal thing how the impossible seems to happen year in and year out. Every year we have implausible, impossible seeming endings, and yet the impossible does happen. The Masters has been played here for 42 years now, and we're pleased to have said that we have had the finest group of players, the greatest competitors here on our golf course. That's what makes the Masters great. One of the biggest problems, or one of the greatest factors in running a golf tournament of this size, is the number of people involved. In the Masters tournament, we need to guide and direct not only those who play in the Masters, but those who work on the Masters and those who attend the Masters. If we can get those three combined, we have no problems whatsoever. The Masters is my life.
So certainly a epitaph, to his what he did. What my memories of my father was the Masters and the Augusta National. Certainly, he gave his whole life to that. So this is a photograph, Frank, that I treasure of him, Magnolia behind him, and a great photograph for us. I think each of us have a copy of that. If not, we need to maybe see if about some additional copies. And this was the show that was in the museum. Was up for maybe a 12-month period or 6 month, and showcase some of our memorabilia and things that I had. So thank you, Nancy, and to the folks here for letting us share that history with the community and the people that are having interest in golf and the Masters. Now these are some of my treasures. When I was, as you can see, from 1971, I don't know where the rest of them went to, but I have clubhouse badge from 71 and clubhouse in 75, 76. It was the clubhouse runner in 77, and then I was clubhouse runner. All the rest of these are all 70, all the way through 81 and beyond. But have some great experiences, and people like Donna here has, she taught me how to use a copy machine, and we ran that at that time. We ran a bunch of copies, didn't we, on everything? And then some other pictures. This is Wayne Hawkins is in here, ran the Mayor's Masters reception, and that opportunity for a photograph with Jack Nicklaus and Ben Crenshaw. These are pictures of the Masters, and then was fortunate to get the Berkman's Place when it first opened, and met Condoleezza Rice, and she was very nice, and great conversation with her. She was very open to having a discussion about my connections. And then, of course, here's a photo I've contributed to the museum. I have the original photo in one of these albums, and I've blown it up and did a print of it for the museum. But this is the first Masters, and you can see this today is the 9th green, and of course 18's here, and they were reversed. So that was the 10th tee, and this was the first tee at that time. And of course you can see the river back here, the canal right here. This is Magnolia Drive, which is where we have the red carpet area, and I've been involved with that for 37 years with the Chambers of Commerce. And meanwhile, all has changed a bit, and the trees that are probably not even existence, they have grown up over the years, and then some of them were impacted in September by the storm. But well, I wasn't there at the time, but I would guess that they probably did. He was pretty well known about town and everywhere else. I mean, he attended Reed Memorial Presbyterian, was a member there, and I'm sure that they did recognize him. They probably said, "Where's all your security detail?" But no. Well, I'll share a story about that. So my mother had an invitation each time Mrs. Eisenhower visited to come and have an afternoon tea. So this time Mrs. Eisenhower said, "Well, bring a couple of your children. Love to see them." So she dressed us up in our Sunday best. I was probably 8 years old. My younger sister Bridget was 6, and we were told, under your best behavior, don't do anything, don't run around, sit down, behave. Yes, ma'am. So we got there, and we were sitting on the couch in the living room of the Eisenhower cabin, and my sister's sitting next to my mother. I'm sitting next to Mrs. Eisenhower. They're sitting together having a conversation, as kids at that age would be. We're saying we don't care what they're talking about. We're just, getting kind of bored. But she offered us some candy out of a candy dish she had there on the table. And so mother said, "Take one piece." Yes, ma'am. One piece. Took one piece, one piece. And I've eaten my candy. I looked over there, and Bridget went and reached down and got another. And I said, "Mom, you're not enforcing the rules here." She reached down and got another. And I said, "I better take this into my own hands." So I reached across to grab my sister's hand, stepped on Mrs. Eisenhower's foot, and she went, "Oh!" Who got the whipping? I did. But anyway, so that's what happens when you have a younger sister. So anyway, hopefully I didn't break anything. Yes, ma'am. Well, obviously she was running a house at the time that to the end of my father's life, with 9 kids. She had her hands full, so she was running a household, and she ran it in a way that everybody had their own job. There was a calendar with everybody's duties labeled on who was supposed to do the setup of the breakfast. We had a buffet line in our kitchen that you had 2 gallons of milk, you had 6 boxes of cereal, and some kind of fruit over here. And it was like, okay, run through there, and then same thing at dinner and clean up. So she did enforce a very well run household, but as she did tell me later in her life, that that wasn't her personality, but it was survival for her to make sure that everybody had their job. And she didn't like being the drill sergeant, but she did it pretty well. But she did keep us in order, and she didn't let 7 boys and 2 girls get out of hand too many times. My dad did have a couple fraternity paddles that were used on occasion. So anyway, but she was busy. I mean, she did get time to go out. Friends with Jackie and Frank, and Frank was quite busy during the Masters too, taking pictures of everybody. I'll tell you a story about this, and Frank, you may remember this one. So Wendy, my older sister, was 13 years old. Johnny Miller was the hot blonde, golfer on tour. So she wanted a picture with Johnny Miller. And so Dad said to Frank, "Can you get a picture of, my kids with Johnny Miller?" So Wendy, myself, and Bridget were staged at the back of the clubhouse by the big wisteria vine. At that time, it was this big around. Now it's about this big. But we were waiting for Frank and for Mr. Miller. Well, Johnny Miller shows up, and he looked around, looked at his watch, and he says, he didn't even say hello to us kids. He just said, "Where's the photographer?" And of course, I could see Frank he's over there with Mr. Roberts doing whatever Mr. Roberts had him do. And I'm sure that he was trying to get through that list of things that Mr. Roberts wanted done. And so after about a couple minutes, which seemed like it was a few seconds, he ran out went and left us. Well, my sister Wendy was my dad's little girl and was very upset about it. Frank shows up and said, where is he? He goes, well, he went on. And so I guess you shared with Dad too that he had kind of ditched us, and my father was not happy about that. So he called up the all the folks that helped the players and told them, okay, locker room, do not lift a hand for Mr. Miller. Do not, transportation is on his own, all those things like that. So I think he got the message. So anyway, I did want to share this. So this is my most recent piece of memorabilia. We rent our house to a golf group that has something to do with the Ryder Cup. So anyway, we were asked to give our house a day early so they could do some filming of a legend of fame in the Ryder Cup. And I thought first it was going to be Sir Nick Faldo, but it turns out it was Jose Maria Olazabal. And so I had the opportunity to meet him at our house, and I got to sit by while they were doing a promotional film for the upcoming Ryder Cup and heard him interviewed. It was a really great experience for me being a golf fan. And after it was over with, he agreed to sign I went and found a 1999 flag that I had in my stack of flags that I always get. And he signed it and says, to my friend Phil. And I felt like we built a friendship. He was very, easy to talk to. I know he's going to have to go out, and I saw him on camera right after that, congratulating the young Spanish girl that won the women's amateur, and so it was kind of neat. I just was with him, and got that. And he signed also. I have a Ryder Cup book that was done by a guy in Aiken named Martin Davis, and he signed that for me too, which is pretty cool. And then this is another little piece of memorabilia that my grandfather, of course, my dad was introducing him to all the players and so forth, and he was very much a golf enthusiast, was a member of Inverness in Toledo, where the U.S. Open was. Well, when Arnold Palmer won the Masters, he was coming off the green and saw my grandfather and handed him the ball that he made his putt with in 1962. So my grandfather, wish he hadn't done this, but it's cool, had it plated in gold, which is cool, but I would like to have the original golf ball. But this is a little memory from my grandfather. He was always sitting in his office when he passed away. I got that. So, and then Mr. Putnam gave me this ball today. This is from the Wahl Cup. My dad was a member of the Gotti Wallies group. They had a group of friends that would go out and do golf trips together and had a good time together. And he gave me this golf ball, which I didn't have. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. So, don't let him get away. One more round of applause, please. Thank you.